Welcome back to the Drummer Time podcast. Christian, what's our first topic today?
Let's talk about it. Um, so, have you heard the news that Google is in talks to acquire a company called Wiz for a staggering, eye-watering $23 billion?
I have not heard this.
Okay, so this is in the news. Google's in talks to make this acquisition, um, and the story of this company is nothing short of absolute perfection. Like the way these people executed the building of. So I'm gonna give you some fast facts. Wiz was started, Wiz was founded 4 years ago. Okay. Wiz, nobody knows about. It's like a not a very like high profile company, but it's very popular amongst like the venture capital community, obviously, because it's like this amazing like success story. But it was founded 4 years ago, now valued close to $23 billion if Google goes through with the acquisition. Um, so, Alex, there's a common statistic that if a startup is able to reach $1 million in ARR within the first year, that's like a very rare and impressive thing. So, if a company is able to get founded and then reach 1 million
That's
ARR
all
in the
right.
first, it's well, I mean, $1 million in a year is
Oh, a
not like,
million, yeah. I thought
yeah,
you
a
were saying
million,
100 million. I don't know why, but
no, $1 million in a year is
yeah, that's pretty good.
pretty impressive, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's very rare for a startup to do that. In 18 months, Wiz reached 100 million ARR in 18 months.
Yeah.
Let that sink in. 18 months after starting. So by the way, they were founded in 2020, which was also when my company was founded, which makes me just like so sad that this company is 4 years in. I'm at the same point, but
They're at 100
they
mil.
no, they're about no. They're at 500 million ARR now.
Oh,
They're
okay.
about to get acquired for 23 billion,
Wow.
and they were started at the same time. So basically, the execution of this company was just perfect. So the kind of crazy stat here is that they were founded 2020. In 18 months, they reached 100 million in ARR. Their product. So you're probably asking yourself, like, what is Wiz? Why does Google want to acquire them? What is this product that's so amazing that Google is trying to
Yeah.
buy them for $20 billion? Wiz is a cybersecurity, um, essentially dashboarding tool. I mean, not really a dashboarding tool.
And
Basically,
they're
what
now known as CrowdStrike.
no, that's funny. Um, well, it's kind of interesting because the basically what Wiz is a cloud cybersecurity company. So there have been tons of cybersecurity companies over the years that offer a bunch of different products. Lots of them were for like, on-prem servers, but for a company that is building in the cloud, there's not really one good tool that can analyze your entire cloud ecosystem and tell you where your vulnerabilities are, threats, sort of lots of different like analysis tools that they provide to kind of give you an idea of like where you need to be focusing your cybersecurity efforts. And so their product is really kind of like the all-in-one platform, because the way their CEO described it is that there wasn't a product where you could look through a single pane of glass that solved this cybersecurity problem. All of the products that existed in the market were very siloed. So like, oh, you could install some agent that would inspect this particular workload, and then this workload, and then this thing over here, and then this service over here. But there wasn't one that you could kind of just go live with in one day, and then it would just do the entire thing for you. So that was what they solved, and there's this kind of mantra of the one job problem. Whereas like if you hired a person to do that one job, and you can build a product for that one job, then you actually have something that's very valuable. And the problem with the existing products in the market was that you couldn't hire a person to do the one job, because you needed to install all these different agents in different places, and then you had to like look at each of these individual like alerts, and it was really really complicated. I've experienced this myself. I'm thinking about using Wiz because it seems to actually solve a very real problem. So um Alex, here's how they did this. here's how they managed to pull this thing off. I think it's absolutely amazing. And like, if anybody's thinking about building a company, try to model it as closely to this as you can, with the venture funding caveat. So Alex, here's how they did this. In 2011, these 4 Israeli guys in Tel Aviv started a company called Adalom. Adalom was another cybersecurity type of software. I don't know exactly what it was, but basically they started this company. I think they raised a total of $20 million, ended up selling it to Microsoft for $320 million. So they sell to Microsoft for $320 million. They're kind of like local celebrities in Israel and Tel Aviv because they had a really successful tech exit. And basically they worked at Microsoft for the next 5 years in mostly like cybersecurity roles. But before I tell you that, I'm gonna add one really cool fact here. These 4 guys met each other in the Israeli military. So when you're building a company and you're selecting co-founders, you kind of need people that you can like go to war with, go into battle with, people that you can trust, not only like from an integrity perspective, but also from like a can I trust this person to do a really good job perspective. And so these guys literally met in the military, and once they got out of the military, they started this company, sold it to Microsoft for 320 million, worked at Microsoft for 5 years in the weeds of cloud security. Like they were working in like the various like cybersecurity roles, Microsoft Azure, that's Microsoft's cloud platform. And they really just kind of were like soaking up the problems in the cybersecurity space for cloud. And they basically the CEO, his name is Asaf Rappaport. He decided in 2019, late 2019, that he's like, I think I'm going to start a company. I'm going to leave Microsoft and go start my own company again, because he was the CEO of this Adalom, the other company they successfully started and sold. And so Rappaport was like, hey guys, I'm going to go start a company. You should join me. Here's what I'm thinking we'll do. And he describes the vision for Wiz, and they all leave with him, and they decide to do it again in early 2020. Here's how they built the product. The execution at every single step of this company has been just perfect. So here's what they did. They said, okay, there's a lot of players in this space. They're not really solving the problem well, and their onboarding sucks. Their products are very siloed. They don't have like a one single pane of glass solution where you as the developer can look through a single pane of glass and see all of the problems with your cybersecurity configuration. So he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make calls, 10 to 15 CISOs per day. That's who we're calling, of Fortune 500 companies. That's it. We're going to reach out to the biggest companies, talk to their cybersecurity like officers, and figure out what exactly their problem is. What are their pain points? And so all they did for like the first several months was they just called people and they talked to them and they tried to get a really, really clear understanding of what the pain points and the problems were for chief security officers at companies. And so before building the product, they just built a pitch deck. So they literally built a presentation, like a PowerPoint. And after talking to all of these chief security officers, they built a PowerPoint. And they said, when I'm talking to Fortune 500 companies, they don't want to see a product demo. They're going to want to see a PowerPoint, right? Or they're, that's what they're used to. That's the me pitching my product doesn't have to be like this, oh, you can sign up in 5 seconds, for some, small or medium-sized business infrastructure security officer. No, I'm going to just make a PowerPoint. I'm going to pitch to Fortune 500 companies, and I'm going to see if I can get a multi-million-dollar contract on the table. If I can get a multi-million-dollar contract on the table, I can go take that money, or I can go take that contract, raise money from venture capital with it, and then I can go use that venture capital money to build the product, which this Fortune 500 company is not going to roll out my product in 2 minutes. They're going to take a few months to roll out my product, so I have time to go build it, and I can build it exactly to their specification. So they literally talk to people. So they talk to potential customers, and really big ones. They got contracts on the table by showing a PowerPoint presentation. And then they went and they raised venture and they built the product. So here is the crazy trajectory after they did this. They raised a $20 million seed round, within the first 6 months of the company. They raised an $80 million Series A. So by the way, a $20 million seed round is nuts. That's a very high, like, seed round, right? But he was already a very successful founder. So in the venture community, like, if a founder has one hit, you can just dump money onto them and like it's gonna be safe. Or at least that's how they view it. They raised an $80 million Series A just a few months after that. By the way, the whole time they're selling. They're just using the same pitch deck, using whatever sort of product traction or product development they have, and then they're selling that. So they've got, I assume they have a sales team at this point. I don't really know what their business development structure is, but I'm 90% sure it's pretty much founder sales at this point because they're getting these multi-million-dollar contracts. So I'm pretty sure at this point they're just doing founder sales. Okay, here's where it gets crazy. Within 1 year of starting the company, they raise $250 million from two different big investors. I don't know the names at this moment, but valuing the company at $2 billion within 1 year of starting. So they are already a unicorn. And then just 6 months after that, they raise another $250 million, valuing the company at $6 billion. So in 18 months, they have created a $2 billion company doing 100 million ARR with this model of sell before you build, get really, really big clients on the table, and solve a problem that is just like you can identify the pain points simply by talking to the customers.
Can I say
So,
something real quick?
and then eventually, yeah, go ahead.
So I want to almost clarify the nuance of that phrase, sell before you build, because this is something Christian and I have been talking a lot about. And I think one way, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but one way I'm looking at this, and I just to state before, I really do like the strategy that they took. Um, and one nuanced way you could rephrase this is almost like find pain points before you build, right? It's not necessarily that they were selling, but they went out and they really found the pain to build the solution to it. So it's not this idea of like, let me go see if people are going to buy this thing that I haven't yet built. It's let me go see what people are struggling with right now before I build. And I think that is really crucial because the sale is pretty much inevitable at that point. If you're able to go to someone and they're like, dude, we can't figure out this cloud thing and we've been or maybe it's just like, oh, this is a big thorn in our side, whatever. They're just figuring out all these thorns that are there for these cybersecurity people. So one way you could think about this, yeah, sell before you build, or you can think about find pains and thorns before you build the solution to this pain. And then the sale is inevitable if these
So
people
they
are all
did
saying
both.
they have this problem. Yeah.
They did both. They first called and tried to get the pain points, and then they sold before they built. So I do agree that in some cases it makes sense to sell before you build, like legitimately sell before you build.
Yeah.
But here's the metric. Here's the formula. Depending on the size of the LTV of the customer, that will ultimately determine whether or not you should sell before you build. I think because, for instance, if you're selling to like a tiny fish, right? Like if my customer is, you know, just a regular person, and I'm selling them like a toothbrush on the internet, it makes sense for me to actually have a toothbrush to sell them. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to sell them something right there. But if I'm selling to a massive company, and I can get like a multi-million-dollar contract on the table, I can say, well, now look, I have like proof that I can get millions of dollars if I go build exactly what we agreed upon. So
Yeah.
I think it really just depends on kind of like what's the book value of that sale. If the sale has a really small book value, you should have a product built, or you should have like a MVP of your product built. But if the book value of your product is or of a sale is really really big, then you can sell before you even built anything, or even just sell on based on a PowerPoint. You do have to have some conviction in like knowing what the product is, because and that's where that first part comes in, identifying the pain points so you know what the product is. then you can build a PowerPoint around what the product would eventually be.
Yeah, it's
So
almost like pain point before you build and then sell before you build and then build, you know?
yeah,
Like a lot of
and
beginners entrepreneurs just skip the pain or the you could call it market research. They just skip it entirely. It's like you haven't even like figured like really thought about the fact that is this a problem for them? Like a lot of people are trying to sell SMMA, marketing services to people and it's like, well, did you ask them if they want more customers? Like maybe they don't, when you're trying to sell someone, they don't even have that pain. Maybe their pain is recruiting, and it's like, okay. And then try to sell that recruiting, okay. And then would you buy this? Okay. And yes, you would also buy the pain that you have. So yeah, but sorry to cut you
that's a
off.
Alex, no, that's a really, really good point. In fact, I would say like, I mean, in technology, in any kind of business, I think that is the biggest problem. Founders will go in and they think they have such a great product, but they have not actually talked to the market.
They just
I
skip the
would say
step.
this is like the number one thing. This is the number one thing. And if you've talked to like only a handful of people, that's not enough. You need to talk. These people were calling 10 to 15 CISOs per day. They were doing this for months. They had hundreds of probably even over 1,000 data points to say like, you know what? This is actually a really, really important thing. We have confirmed this with hundreds of times now. Because if you talk to one or two people, you will get variance, right? If you talk to five people, you'll get variance. You need to talk to 20, 30, 50 before you can even consider going on to like start iterating on what that product would be. You need to talk to a lot of people.
Mhm.
So that's such a great point. In fact, that's like my one piece of advice. If anybody listening is thinking about starting any kind of company, specifically like a technology company, talk to customers before you start building. Talk to
Yeah.
people, figure out if the thing that you are planning to build actually makes sense. Um, yeah, and also the customer discovery process is something that's very important to get right as well, like asking the right questions, not being too leading. Um, and there's actually something in here that they talk about. The chief of product strategy or something for Wiz, she talks about this. She says you can identify a problem. But if that problem is not a priority one problem, what you're going to get in your customer discovery process is nods and smiles. But when it comes to like writing a check, you're not going to get the money. You're not going to get the sale because it's not a priority one problem for them. It's like a priority five problem. And it's like it's a problem, but it's not something they really care about right now. It's not something they're like trying to solve at the moment. So ultimately, she says like if you want to go build a product, if you want to go, um, sell before you build, make sure that you're like, it's really, really easy. This process works really, really well if you've identified a priority one problem. So when in your customer discovery, you need to figure out where your problem actually ranks in the order of priorities on their sort of, on
Yeah.
their plate, what they're dealing with. So that's a really important one as well, is make sure that because you can talk to 100 people and they'll all give you nods and smiles, but if your problem is a priority five problem, you're not gonna like even if you go build the product and sell it after that, you're not gonna be successful because you've identified a problem. It's just not important.
Yeah, I feel like if you just unbiasedly ask them, hey, what are your problems? A lot of times they will say like their number one thing because it is coming up bubbling to the top of their priority list. And then you can of course say, okay, now where does this one rank? Is there one that's even more challenging for you? Like whatever, whatever, right? And maybe you get 5 to 10 things out of them. And maybe with some questions, you're able to arrange those in priority. And then you go and sell. Because if you go and say, hey, I have this like marketing service in mind, like, and then I go to my customers and I try to sell before I build, and it's like, hey, would you buy this? And they're like, yeah, I guess. But what you didn't ask is what are your main problems and what is your highest priority problem? You didn't just have those open-ended questions, just see what their problems are and then sell. So it's almost like pain before you sell, before you build. People say sell before you build, but it's almost like pain before you sell, before you build. So that's just my thought on it. But yeah, I think we're both in agreement there. But sorry to cut
Yeah.
you off as well if you wanted to segue back to the storyline of them. But
No, no,
if
this
there's
is
anything else.
so I think this is basically it. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about was so they kind of nailed there's a few things that are really, really important to get right for a startup. But there's two things. So there's two things I wanted to talk about, and then there's a strategy perspective that we must cover. It's just kind of amazing that they did this. They pulled the strategy they did. But two things they got absolutely right: product and team. So I don't know. Somehow they are closing just hundreds of these multi-million dollar deals. I don't know how they're doing it, but they reached 100 million ARR in 18 months, which is insane. I don't know how they're doing that without like a crazy sales team, but I don't think they have one, or at least I don't think that's been their priority. I think they are a very much like founder sales driven kind of situation, and probably word of mouth, but they nailed product. And the way they did that was what we just talked about: tons of customer discovery, product research. So that's off the table. That's the first item. They nailed the product. Second thing they did well is the team. So this is awesome. I mean, this affirms a lot of things I believe. But so obviously the four co-founders um, previously worked in Israeli military cybersecurity division. So obviously all super competent guys, really smart, just four geniuses that's starting this company, really, really high amount of experience and discipline in this one field. Think about it. Their first company was a cybersecurity company. They knocked it out of the park. They worked at Microsoft, you know, in the cybersecurity space for another 5 years. And then they started another cybersecurity company after that. So they've had since 2011 was when they started their first company. They basically had 9 years muddling around with this. Actually, and before that, they met in 2001 in the cybersecurity division in the Israeli military. So they've had 20 years sitting with this problem. So they know it super well. And so that's all they've been doing. So they nailed the team. Here's what they did after that. And this is a quote from David Ogilvy. David Ogilvy says, if I start a company and I hire a bunch of people smaller than me, then we will have a company of dwarves. But if I start a company and I hire a bunch of people larger than me, we'll have a company of giants. So basically, if every layer of your company, every like piece of hierarchy is looking to hire people only better than them, more competent in the specific domain, then you will have like just an amazing company with every little piece of the product, every little piece of your operations just firing with perfection, just absolutely executing perfectly. And so that's the approach they took. And I'm going to read you a quote that kind of exemplifies this. This is from a Forbes article. They hire and fire ruthlessly, or they hire and fire ruthlessly. Outside of Wiz's founders and inner circle, executives haven't lasted long. In September, Rappaport, the CEO, asked Herzberg to move from product to chief marketing officer, its third in 3 years, despite no marketing experience. The previous CMO, an industry vet from Okta, lasted just 9 months. A chief customer officer quit after 2 weeks. Wiz lacks other key leaders expected of a company of its size, such as a chief financial officer. Several anonymous employees on job sites, such as Glassdoor, have posted that workers simply hope to last 1 year, a requirement at most startups for any equity to vest. Meaning, the bar is so high that if you don't meet the bar, you just won't last long. And that's one of the recipes for the excellence of this company is if you can't make it, then you're not going to stay. And so it's evident that the four people that started this company are excellent, and they only tolerate excellence in everybody that gets hired after that. So that's like one of the other things. I wanted to talk about their like strategy for doing this though. And this is the crazy part. I think this is amazing. It shows extreme ambition and discipline, like just insane to me. So Rappaport basically said, okay, we're going into this market. There are lots of competitors. The competitors are really big and high and established. They've been in the market for years. What they decided to do was we are going to go into this market. We are going to raise as much money as we can constantly and hire only excellent people, but we're going to do it religiously. We're going to keep hiring open all the time, and we're just going to increase the surface area that excellent people can kind of just like filter through. We don't want to have these little phases of hiring where we bring on a bunch of people, some of them are good and they stay and the rest leave or they get fired. We want to just leave the net open. We want to keep the net in the water as long as possible and only catch winners and bring them on. And so they have been continuously hiring since they started. and they have been continuously raising money. To date, they have raised $900 million, which is a lot for a 4-year-old company. But with that capital, they have clearly allocated it excellently, and they are now at $500 million ARR. They're about to be acquired by Google for close, for 23 billion, which means they are trading at like a 40x multiple, which is very high. But the reason it's very high is also because of their growth trajectory. You can't command a 40x multiple if your growth trajectory is really slow, if you're a very slowly growing company. But if you're a super highly growing company, obviously your multiple can be really high. So the ambition of just saying, you know what, we're just going to raise a ton of money. We're going to sell only to really, really big companies at super high ticket value, right? Multi-million-dollar contracts. And we're going to make sure we get the product perfect, and the team perfect. And they have just executed it to a T.
So how did they get this experience, and the idea in the first place that other companies weren't able to do? Where do they get their experience, and then what are they selling?
Well, they got their experience from the Israeli military when they were working in the cybersecurity company or cybersecurity division. And then they started a company, Adalum, which was also in the cybersecurity space. And then they worked in Microsoft in cybersecurity. So for 20 years, they were in cybersecurity. The product is kind of like an all-in-one solution. So the way cloud cybersecurity works today, you have to essentially aggregate a bunch of other little products together in order to have like a full cloud cybersecurity solution. Wiz basically takes that concept and puts it all into one product. And the idea that the analogy their CEO gives is the single pane of glass sort of idea. So basically, you want to be able to look through a single pane of glass and see, the entirety of your cybersecurity, setup, your configuration. Like, okay, these are the things that we can focus on. We can prioritize these. These are your vulnerabilities. This is kind of like your over permissioned set of users, etc. All right. Here's an analogy. Before I wanted to go sell something, like before Shopify, when I wanted to go sell something online, I had to go find someone to build me a website, or I had to know how to code. I had to go figure out a way to accept payments, or I had to find like a provider and plug it into my website and then get that all working. And then I had to be able to go kind of get a bunch of products, or get a single product and then be able to display it neatly in my website and manage that inventory myself. That was before Shopify. Shopify came around and they basically took all these things and said, without any coding skills, you can just go live and start selling on the website, selling on Shopify without having to do any of this. We can set you up with payments. We can set you up with inventory management, website building. You don't have to know how to code. You don't have to cobble a bunch of different products together. And so that was what Shopify solved. And that's basically what Wiz is, but for cloud cybersecurity. And so something else that is really important is with Shopify, they basically said, your only job, we know that you only care about selling your particular product online. You don't care about learning how to code websites. You don't care about learning how to design websites. You don't care about learning how payments work on the internet. We don't care about any of that stuff. You care about this one job. So if we can clear away all that other junk for you and let you focus on this one job, then we're providing you value. And that's what Wiz is. They basically said, if we can like get rid of all of this cybersecurity mess and let you focus on your core product, which is whatever, for Costco, it's selling product, selling products to customers at sort of bulk discount. Then we're going to provide you value if we can take care of the cybersecurity burden. So that's basically what Wiz is.
Gotcha. Gotcha. It's a cool
Yeah.
story. Yeah, that's awesome.